But you know what I think? I think we should take what Jeff just said and riff on this. I think there's a topic. I think there is an Agile thing here.
You mean here's this Agile thing?
With Mike Markey.
Matt Beam.
And Jeff Singleton.
And we can talk about this concept of Scrum Masters and what they do and versus coaches and what they do and what's the expectations between the two.
Well, there's a number of stances as a Scrum Master I've been made aware.
I believe there are. There's a number of there's a guy name of Barry Overeem or something like that. Overeem. And Barry did a white paper on the 8 stances of the Scrum Master.
Would you like to list those or shall I?
Go ahead.
Okay. So I'm looking at this list here. It looks like he's got servant leader, coach, facilitator, teacher, mentor, manager, impediment remover, change agent. And he also has this, he starts off with this section of from 50% Agile Coach to 100% Scrum Master. I don't even know what that means. Hopefully you've read it.
50% Agile Coach to 100%
Under the table
Master.
of contents. I see that.
I mean, I haven't. I did not read the
Fair enough.
But I did skim it. And I looked at the 8 stances and as it seems we had similar reactions to at least one bullet point on that list.
Yeah, the manager thing, I think definitely, begs the question. Is it begs the question?
Servant leader manager, but maybe what we're talking about here is really, it isn't you are all these things. It's that at various times you may need to step into, maybe take one hat off and put on another hat.
Well,
I did read through it and my antenna immediately went up when I saw manager in the table of contents. But things are not always what they appear. And so I did take the liberty of reading through, and he actually talks about Scrum Master as manager in a little different way than you would typically think of a manager. So he's talking about, as a manager, managing impediments, eliminating waste, managing the process, managing the team's health, managing the boundaries, managing the culture. So that's different than managing the individual.
104%. Yes.
So this is maybe this is more in the realm of shepherding things through. So like taking an impediment and making sure it does not go unanswered, taking risks and helping the team formulate responses to those risks or potentially do things. Kind of the stuff that project managers of old may have taken a certain ownership of.
Good ones.
Right.
The good ones. Not
totally fair. So it's not the red flag.
Ones.
It's not the red flag that we thought we heard, which was managing people. It's like more managing stuff. Although I would still think I know a fair number of Scrum enthusiasts, purists, who would even tell you that the idea that the Scrum Master being the one who, like, that would, I think, strike some people as a Scrum mom or a Scrum, it's the Scrum Master is not supposed to be the team's sort of person who makes sure that they don't drop it. It's really, the idea is that they master the process, help the team understand the process and practice it ultimately. But anyway, that's more sort of a purist.
Well, fair, just to illustrate that with a point, Jeff, we did the APLN meeting last night, and one of our guest Scrum Masters, or one of the Scrum Masters who joined us, was talking about how in their organization they had drawn a bunch of their Scrum Masters from the project manager pool, and that they were all operating to a certain level of competency, and there was one that was standing out as they had it down, like their team was just thriving, and everyone kept saying, we should do what that person, we should bottle that, we should do more of what that person does. And then that person left, and they brought in a more traditional Scrum Master, and the whole thing went to hell because it turned out that one Scrum Master manager was doing everything. They were holding their hands, they were handing out assignments, they would just make sure that no ball was left unmanaged.
So was it really Scrum then that they were doing?
Maybe on the surface.
It was Scrum shaped.
Right.
People do all kinds of things and call it Scrum, and I don't know.
Yeah. You know, you stand up every once in a while. Yeah.
Yeah, but without the team ownership of it, it's like it feels like we have got it's like baking a cake with everything except the sugar and the flour.
The risk of being provocative, you own it if I tell you what you own.
And to give you a little bit more context, though, I think this individual who had departed had good intentions. And the reason I say that, and I want to believe that, is because I'm going through a very similar situation with a team right now. And the person that was their Scrum Master was perceived to be a really high-performing person. Top-notch Scrum Master, that's what you want. You want the mold of that person. Mm-hmm. And in actuality, after they left, the team fell into massive disarray, kind of like the Lord of the Flies sort of thing. And
wow,
they had a culture, but it was not a healthy one. And as we peeled back the layers of the onion, we began to realize, oh, they're just responding to the void and the misguidance, well-intentioned, but misguidance of the former Scrum Master who actually did everything for them. They moved code for them. They did QA for them. They did it all. I mean, they wore more hats than a hat man. So
hat man.
In a proactive action mode.
Yeah, in other words, they didn't enable the team. And I think a good Scrum Master enables the team.
Yeah.
Teaches them, we talk about it, teaching, mentoring, teaching them how to fish versus, oh, I got that fish for you. I got that fish for you. And it disabled them, and yet it also gave them license to feel like, oh, then all I have to do is this little bitty piece right here. And when a real Scrum Master came in and tried to say, well, this is what I do. Mm-hmm. They said, well, no, you have to do all this other stuff that so-and-so did. Since when? And so that led to a whole lot of conflict. Like, all right, let's sort this out. This is all to say the intentions were good, but the previous Scrum Master really overstepped their bounds and was very proactively disabling the team, not in a way of malice, but not enabling the team to do things for themselves.
Yeah, I would say that the part of what you have to have as a Scrum Master and as a coach is a sense of the dynamics, like the group, like the social. I was on this webinar recently with Max Agility. I don't know if you guys have seen that. It's kind of a funny name. It reminds me when Homer Simpson called himself Max Power when he got the name off the hairdryer. Brian Willis, I think is this guy's name. It was a great presentation, but he talked about the Nanny McPhee principle. Have you heard about this? Mm-mm. Apparently this is a character from some literature. I don't know.
It is a character. Yeah.
Yeah. Is there singing in the movie? That's probably why I haven't seen it.
There may or may not be. I'm pretty sure there's a wart. That's
a
the
wart?
only thing I know.
Okay. I don't want to know. So, but what he was saying was the principle is when the team doesn't want me, but they need me, that's when I show up. Right. And when the team wants me, but they don't need me, that's when I leave. Right. And so there's this sense of like the team doesn't necessarily, they're not in the best position to understand what coaching or what Scrum mastering they need, because the whole point is that you've got somebody who's a master of Scrum or a master of the systems and dynamics that like they can show you stuff that you didn't. It's, you don't know what you don't know kind of a thing. If you don't have a sense of what people don't know that they don't know, I don't know how you even decide where to apply yourself.
Well, I think we're dancing around. I mean, one of the stances that's in this paper is the servant leader, obviously the first thing that we keep saying.
Yeah.
And is it possible? And I think this may be possible that people are misinterpreting the concept of servant leadership and taking it to an extreme that is unhealthy or unsustainable for them. We had another individual last night who was looking for support, wondering at what point do they stop? When do they stop doing for the team? When do they back off and do for themselves? When they were working long hours, they were taking on too much and feeling like they had to. Like that was just like by whether through a misinterpretation of what servant leadership meant or maybe an evolution of feeling just they liked being wanted, maybe. And we obviously in the few minutes that we talked about, there was not enough time to really render a psychological profile on anybody, and it would have been unwise to do so. But I do think there is something here in that there are people who take that servant leadership concept and say, well, I'm not allowed to tell people what to do anymore, because the second thing they tell us is Scrum Master has no authority, right, over the team. It's in there somewhere.
Yeah, I would say I would get, but you want to talk about what kind of authority, because certainly they don't have role power. They can't tell you what to do based on their title, and they don't have, but they might have like knowledge authority, or like what's the word I'm looking for? Influential. Like they might be well respected. Yeah, relationship authority. Yeah.
But if you are a person who is used to telling people what to do, and you're put in this role and you're told you're not allowed to tell people what to do, and your first tool in your toolbox is not influencing,
right?
What's your alternative?
You have to grow some
you do it yourself. You
Yeah.
do it yourself.
Yeah.
And I think there might have been, and we didn't get far enough into it. Maybe there was a trust thing involved. Maybe there was, there even could have been that.
Yeah, I've talked to a bunch of leaders who heard servant leader and like it rubbed them the wrong way. Like I think they heard subservient leader in that, right? Like they took it as a major demotion because, I guess they thought of themselves as the people who could tell other people what to do, as a sort of one of the modes that they like to be in. And I mean, if you're a manager, technically you can always do that, but like it's an inverse relationship of how often you use it to how effective it is.
Isn't that amazing though, that the term Scrum Master, and that term has taken on, some people are looking at that as being a derogatory term as well. They're just, if you're the master, then what's everyone else?
Practitioner.
Right. But then you take and say, you are the Scrum Master and the servant leader. So are you a servant
and a master?
Are you a servant and a master, or are you a leader of servants?
Separated by a common language.
Yeah. So obviously that's not the intent of servant leadership.
I think, and I don't want to digress too much here on this.
Yeah, it's a podcast.
But the terms manager and leader are used synonymously, and they should not be.
Right, definitely.
Because people who are in manager or managerial type roles are not necessarily leaders. We call them, sadly, leaders just by virtue of their title. And maybe tenure. But the reality is, and I've talked about this before, there's a book called The Work of Management. And in it, Lancaster talks about the real role of management as leaders, In other words, your job is to enable the people below or further downstream. So in other words, instead of the pyramid where the CEO is at the top and all the underlings are at the bottom, he turns that on its head. The people that are delivering, the people that are responsible for delivering are the people. And your job as a leader, whether it's the middle management or even C-level, is to enable those people. And so it turns it on its head. It's not, this whole, I say what you need to do and you'll do it. It's the opposite. They're the people on the line are the ones that are the experts.
Yeah.
And
that enablement, I think enablement is the key, the phrase that pays these days. Yeah. And it rhymes. So
interesting.
That's good. Yeah. So we're enabling things. Now, what's interesting, and I don't know if this is a English language thing or if it was, but some of the bullet points that he has in his stances, he's got facilitator, coach, mentor, teacher, and those are 4 near synonyms. Like they are somewhat synonymous words, right? So he had to establish a distinction between them. And so teaching, now earlier, Matt, you had said, knowing the rules of Scrum and passing those along and making sure that those are clearly understood. I think that was the teacher role. That was when you're standing up and being the lecturer. You're the downloading of knowledge.
Right.
Person, right?
The concept from last week's.
But then there's mentor, and mentor was a little bit more like the know-how, not the what to do, but the how to nuance it, like how the practical experience side of things.
Yeah, I saw these 4 things: teacher, facilitator, coach, mentor. I was, just as a brief digression, tell me if this murders your point, Mike, but I was listening to a podcast a year ago, and I was a brilliant, as a guy who used to be it was a leading Agile podcast, a guy who used to be a band teacher in Georgia, and he was talking about, he was now an Agile coach. He said there's a logical chain of, there's an order of these things. And I believe he said it goes, for him, this is how it was effective for him, he goes first teacher, then facilitator, then coach, then mentor. And his rationale was, I meet you for the first time, you have no idea who I am, I can offer you some knowledge. Here's some stuff that you maybe didn't know. I can just teach it to you. There's no relationship. Then as you start to understand that I know what I'm talking about and I might be useful, I can come and facilitate some stuff for you. Right? I can make a meeting work or show you how the process works. At that point, maybe you trust me enough and I become useful enough to coach you, right? We have enough of a relationship. And then after that, long term, we can stay in touch and I can be a mentor, meaning wherever you're trying to go and I've been down the path further than you're going on. And you can he drew out a logical connection between those 4 roles. It just popped into my head. I thought it was super.
And that may be true, but I don't know that they were presented in that same sequence here, or if there was a sequence, or even if there was a sequence implied in the white paper here.
Yeah, totally.
But yeah, I mean, those are somewhat clear things. I mean, if we just look at the description he's got here when he's talking about facilitator, it's more like setting the stage. It's building the sandbox in which all this activity is going to happen, and making sure that the sandbox looks right and is well cared for. And now you will play in the sandbox, and I will.
Making it easy for the thing to happen. So, yeah, totally.
Okay. Let's see. What one haven't we? Oh, we haven't talked about impediment remover.
Yeah, how is that? That seems related to manager. Because the manager says responsible for managing impediments.
Yeah.
An impediment remover says solving blocking issues. But why would you do that? Why wouldn't you have the team do that?
Well,
maybe it's stuff that the team can't resolve?
Depends. I mean, there are different levels of impediments. And so if you're like the mom the mommy Scrum Master, wet nursing your team, then you're disabling them to the point that I made earlier.
Yeah.
But there are some impediments that are clearly outside of the boundaries or capabilities of the team. Those are the ones that we look to Scrum Masters to either resolve, and sometimes, actually I'd argue a lot of times, from an organizational perspective, those are even outside the boundaries of your average Scrum Master, but it's incumbent upon them to raise them, escalate them, and make sure that they are run to ground so that something happens on them. And so some impediments we want the team to solve themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, everything they can solve themselves, they should, I would think, right? Otherwise, the leader would be like, why are you bringing this to me? You could have done this. Yeah.
Yeah, and that kind of goes along with, part of the role of a Scrum Master, and he didn't put that on there, is put yourself out of a job.
Nanny McPhee do.
Which we would hope that that's somewhere in there, is that as your team matures and gets to a certain maturity level, they're not going to need you as much, right? You're not going to have as much day-to-day things to do. So, but we should try to figure out some rationale between manager having responsibility for managing the impediments and then this impediment remover is a separate thing. I think we know that the Scrum Master is responsible for ensuring that impediments are dealt with, right? That they don't go unanswered.
Yeah, you could think of them as like a solver of last resort, right? They're the ones who make steps back and sees the big picture and makes sure it doesn't get dropped, right?
Yeah. You always kind of picture the team down in this little valley and they come up with impediments. They go running, and the Scrum Master's running around the rim of the valley, and every time they come up, they go, here's an impediment, and the Scrum Master kicks it back down into the thing and says, no, deal with that.
Interesting.
That's an interesting visual.
Yeah, I had never seen that visual.
There's a bad joke that goes with that.
Well, this is a podcast, so it's the place for bad jokes, please. No? Okay.
No, it had to do with these the people down in the valley were called trids.
Oh, not Lilliputians.
And whenever the trid would try and climb up out of the valley, the guy at the top would kick the trid back down. And
is this some Star Trek shit?
No. And then the trids got tired of it, and they brought this rabbi along. They brought the rabbi up, and the trids just tried to run up, and the person at the top was running around kicking the trids back down, but left the rabbi alone. And the rabbi goes, wait a minute, why are you ignoring me? And he turns and says, silly rabbi, kicks are for trids.
Oh, my God.
Thank you.
I need a moment. Hold on. Jesus. I thought they were Ewoks, but I didn't see that coming. So I'm gonna propose that you could rename impediment remover to chief escalator
trid kicker
to trid kicker.
Trid kicker.
Yeah. No, because the manager, you could see a manager being responsible for making sure that the stuff doesn't get dropped, but then it's a separate thing to say impediment remover. It kind of sounds like somebody who would escalate stuff into the organization, doesn't it? So maybe that would be it. I don't know. I'm not telling Barry how to
figures out where the appropriate person is.
Yeah. God, I can't believe you told that joke.
I can't believe you made me.
I know. I'm sorry. I apologize, everybody.
You walked right into it.
I take full responsibility.
You demanded it.
I did.
The trid you are.
Oh my God. Let's not make this personal.
Dear. All right. So those are the 8 stances of a Scrum Master, and eventually Scrum Masters grow up.
We didn't talk about change agent.
I was just going to say.
Oh, we didn't? You're right. We didn't.
You missed
Damn it.
change agent.
Missed one. All right. Change agent.
Missed it by that much. Well, so to enable a culture in which Scrum teams can flourish.
A culture.
To enable a culture.
Not an environment, not the sandbox, all this, but the culture, the larger, esoteric, intangible mindset surrounding the team.
Like the hardest deliverable you could think of to take ownership of, isn't it? Like what would be harder than culture? What am I going to deliver? Culture?
And change agent would imply there's something that needs changing. I mean, if you're in a steady state agile organization in which there are scrum masters assigned to individual teams and everything's going along hunky-dory, I assume those things exist and we never see them because they don't have any need of coaching. So
do you remember, Mike, this was a long time ago. God, this might have been 10 years ago. I am 100 years old. But there was I think it was an APLN meeting where they had somebody come in. It was a man and a woman from a health system in Indiana.
Oh, yeah.
And they talked about culture and how they specifically took an organization, like the thing they were focused on was culture. And this is a paraphrase of a 10-year-old memory, but I think basically they talked about how they gathered data on what sucked in the original state, and then they engaged leadership, and they said, this is what we're going to do, and created a backlog. And they had specific ways that they went out and changed people's practices and the way they thought about, and basically it sounded like they had been successful with it. Do you remember this?
I do remember. I don't remember the details, but I remember the two of them up there talking about it. It was definitely one of our more interesting.
Oh, that was fascinating. I didn't realize how interesting it was at the time.
Yeah, I know. We were all in a different place.
We certainly were. That might have been 2015 or so, 2014, something like that.
But
so it's a thing that people have done apparently in the world, but it's not common at all. Especially to take culture as the thing that you're gonna to choose as the deliverable. Anyway, I didn't mean to take us down a rabbit hole. Maybe we should get them on as guests at some point, see what they're up to.
If we can find them, yeah. I mean, we should be able to dig back through the archives.
The archives.
See if we can figure out who they are.
Totally.
Check on them, see what they're doing now.
When you think about the 8 stances, though, of a Scrum Master, I think a few things come to mind. Number one, there are those 8 hats, and there's a lot of overlap. And nobody is good at all 8. We have our natural tendencies, our backgrounds. And so, I think for somebody that's on that journey, it's appropriate for them to recognize where the strengths are, where the weaknesses are, but don't just get stuck in a groove. What I see a lot of times, I'm thinking of a particular team, and the Scrum Master is a very good servant leader, and they protect the team, but they don't occupy the other 7 elements, the other 7 stances. And I get it. This is who they are, and they're probably early in their journey. But what I want to see from this individual, and this is somebody I'm coaching, what I want to see from this individual, though, is an expansion, a desire to expand their repertoire so that they can, get at least serviceable at some of these other 7 stances. And it dawned on me, will the organization recognize that, though? And a lot of times we see, whether it's an advertisement for a Scrum Master, or we walk into a situation where they're looking at hiring Scrum Masters, and I don't know that the organizations are necessarily looking at these are the 8 stances that we want embodied in our Scrum Masters, and to a certain degree, I'd say they may even be disabled from doing some of those stances just because of organizational constructs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and I think that the idea of stances is that at different times you will be in a different, coming at the team from a different place. And when they're very early on, there might be more managing and more, a more heavy-handed approach, more of a teacher, more of a manager, more of a facilitator, not so much facilitation right off the bat, unless it's using it from the standpoint of setting up the environment. But then as the team matures, you've got to be able to step back from that, and you're enabling the team to take on more and more of that stuff themselves, and then you're in more of that mentor role, right, where you're saying this is one of those things that you probably could answer yourself. Or maybe even in the coaching place, since the coaching place is in between place where you want them to think about the answer and you want to help them think about finding the answer themselves, not just, you're trying to unlock potential. You're not out there throwing the ball. You might be helping call plays, but they still have to execute. So.
Yeah, it strikes me that maybe the most important thing, like you're right, Jeff, you're not going to be good at all of these, probably. There's kind of like going to be some of them that don't, just for whatever reason, you're not inherently drawn to. But it's probably a good idea to at least have an idea of what the whole thing is so that it's sort of a superpower to not just know what you're good at, but to know the stuff you're not so good at. Right. Because I think one of Warren Buffett's rules of investing is first, don't do anything stupid. Right. And I see this pattern all over the place. Like literally, the really good people in different places are like, medicine, first do no harm. Right. Like it's a well-known pattern to be like, first of all, know what the potential downside is and cap that. So to know that, the team might need a mentor, but I don't like doing that, or I don't know how to, or whatever. Like just to know what the whole context is super useful, and then start to figure out who you are and what areas you want to grow into. But you're right. I think a lot of organizations aren't even necessarily thinking about it from that perspective. So,
do you think there might be an overlay here with the 6 working geniuses? Like some people are more comfortable in the dreaming part, more comfortable in the decision-making part, more comfortable in the evangelization part, and then more comfortable in the execution side of things.
My guess is there's gotta be, right?
Yeah. So you have, and that's why it's good to have a variety of Scrum Masters and to have even a community of them, right? Where when one Scrum Master who's better at a certain mode is involved with a team that's kind of in another place right now, whether to go get advice from one of the people who are better at this thing or to even swap them out. Although swapping them out isn't going to give that Scrum Master a chance to hone those skills, right?
Yeah, but if you're a director or a VP of agility or whatever at a large company and you've got a stable of coaches working for you, this seems like the natural kind of thing you'd want to talk about in your community of excellence, or like just the way you think about how you actually manage your people, to use manager for in the classical sense, right? Like hiring people with a range of different skills so that they can, I don't know, pair, reinforce each other, right?
Yeah.
Learn from each other.
Bounce ideas.
Yeah. Yeah, and the other thing, honestly, Mike, when you brought this up earlier today, I thought what we were talking about, the other thing this reminds me of is there's a thing called the Agile Coaching Growth Wheel from the Scrum Alliance. Yeah, and I think there's a couple versions of this, but like if you go to scrumalliance.org or just search for it, you can find it. I've got it up here, and they've got like, their version is like Agile Lean Practitioner, Professional Coaching, Facilitating, Transformation Mastery, Business Mastery, Technical Mastery, Mentoring, and Teaching. So there's some overlap there, but there's some unique stuff for the coaching realm, right? So this is, again, it's just, I like to look at patterns and how this is, in the coaching space. There's a similar thing that, you might be good at facilitating and teaching and mentoring, but maybe not that great at business mastery. And that doesn't make you a bad coach. It just makes you, more useful for certain assignments and less useful for other ones.
Okay. Yeah. And, I'm looking at the wheel right now. It does look like there's a little bit of overlap with some of the other stuff because, as a companion, or maybe I think it evolved, but it was sort of inspired, I guess, from the 8 stances of the Scrum Master. Somebody came up with stances for coaching. And whereas your wheel appears to show 7, the stances that they came up with were 9. They came up with 9 coaching and consulting stances. And they laid these out on a grid going, kind of along two axes. One was the consultant's responsibility for project results and the consultant's responsibility for client growth. And so at the lowest level of responsibility for results and growth is being just an observer. Like you're just looking, right? You're not getting involved. You're not taking a stance in any direction at all. But to go from there and say we're moving more toward being responsible for project results, the next thing over would be a technical advisor, right? I've now looked at you for a while. I can now give you advice on how to execute that project better.
Right.
Right. And then going even further down that line to become the responsible party for those results, you're being hands-on. You are getting right into the trenches with everybody and helping dig.
Does that take you out of the realm of coach then when you become when you have delivery responsibility?
I think it does. And I think that's one of the main differences between the consultant coach and the in-house coach.
Player
right?
coach.
Yeah. Because the player, they probably will get called upon to be involved. But that's only 3 of the 9 stances, right? It's if you went up from the no responsibility for project and started talking about client growth, you go from reflective observer up to facilitator, right? And then from facilitator, you would go up to the pure growth, no responsibility for delivery. You're a counselor, right? So that's all about the people side of things.
Yeah.
Right. And then if you're going, and the other 4 quadrants, dead center is teacher. Teacher is the one who's in the middle of project results and growth, personal growth. At the top of personal growth and sort of midway in project results is coaching. So that the middle tier goes from technical advisor up to teacher up to coach. And then there's the people who are totally responsible for everything, and that's a partner. That's something they're not, right? So they're involved in that. And then the slightly down between partner and hands-on expert is modeler. So there's that. You know how to do it, but you're not there to do it for them. You're there to demonstrate. It's more of you know what I mean?
You can watch me for a fee.
Yeah. I will do it. You watch me. You learn from me. But I'm not going to sit here and do this for you all the time.
Yeah. Boy, there's a lot of... So this explains why there can be so much confusion about what is a coach, what does a coach do, how much are they worth, how do you measure their results, how do you hire one? Like it really... I know consultants hate, we don't want to say it depends, but like you can't answer that question without looking at the context. And
right. We got 9 stances. Which one are you looking for?
Right.
Right. And they're all valid, and you may move from one place to another, right?
Totally.
When you first start out, we definitely all start in the observer category. I mean, it would be irresponsible to go in and just start rendering advice
to people you literally know nothing about and just met.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So then the direction you end up going from there is going to is going to kind of what's the outcome you're looking for? Right? Are you looking for growth of the organization? Or are you looking for project success? Because if you're going for project success, then we have to go down. We'll lean more into me telling you what to do. And otherwise, it's more me helping you learn what to do or learning how to do. Learning how to do, I think, is more of that. Up to facilitator, up to counselor. Right?
Agreed. Yeah, I mean, I lean heavily into the teaching, the facilitating, mentoring. I don't really dip into technical mastery. Like I stopped writing code a long time ago, but the transformation mastery, I think I have some of. Like there's definitely areas that I've got, but if you need a technical coach, not your guy, right? If you need a professional coach, I'm not board certified or licensed in those things. And it's important to know that, right? Because if somebody comes to me with one of those problems, I could do more harm than good. So,
yeah. So there's some overlap here with the stances of a Scrum Master.
Totally.
The facilitator stuff for sure, the teacher stuff. The technical advisor is really when you're really being more of the manager side of things, maybe.
Or just helping them implement tech
Yeah.
nerd stuff. I said it.
Yeah,
nerd
it's
stuff.
not a perfect overlap here.
Yeah.
It's almost like they talk about things from two different concepts. Like the concept of coaching is really more esoteric about, and not the doing of things so much as the enablement, again, more enablement of things, right? Whereas Scrum Master being involved with the teams that are actually doing delivery they are part of the team. They are, sharing in the outcome
Yeah.
celebration or whatever. Maybe, being a doer or a...
Contributor to the increment?
Sure, let's go with contributor.
Let's
I
go
like
to
it.
contributor. Yeah, I think these are I mean, these are all just models, right? And all models are wrong, but many of them are useful. I heard somebody say once. So
Who was that?
I honestly don't know. Jeff, you probably know.
I used to know, and I read it fairly recently again, and it escapes me right now.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, if you know, send us an email at HTAT. No,
Questions. Questions at
Take two.
HTAT.show.
Questions at HTAT.show. Let us know who said that. We're coming up on 46 minutes.
Okay.
All right,
Well, there's one other thing that we could discuss briefly. We could talk about somebody had put together 7 types of Agile coaches, which was really more about personality groups or personality structures or what drove them. But they came up with these classifications: the artist, the evangelist, the Viking, the mediator, the professor, the networker, and the innovator.
Was that not you?
I didn't make it up.
Oh, I always assumed that was you.
That was
the
not
author.
me. No. I just really vibed on it. I liked it a lot.
Oh, okay.
But whenever we would talk about this with a group of coaches, we would have the room. We would present all the roles, then we'd have the room vote on what they thought everybody was.
Maybe that's how we could wrap up today's thing. Do you want to guess which one you are, or should we guess which one the other one is? We might have to have a quick definition of what because I'm not even sure what.
Yeah, you might. The terms are.
Is that a link? And I can just go through the LinkedIn.
The document I gave you. Yeah, there's a LinkedIn that's still there. The 7 types. The artist, charismatic, passionate about their profession, a lot of knowledge and skills they would like to bring to the stage.
That sounds like Mike.
Well, here's their personal need: recognition. They want to shine. They look for applause. They look for recognition for what they do.
Why was I wrong? I'm not sure I was wrong.
Listen, you.
Ouch.
No, I'm not. That's not a bad thing. None of these are bad things, right? They're just different.
See, I don't really think of myself as the artist. I generally don't. I think of myself more on the evangelist scale. So the evangelist scale is they're motivated by spreading as much knowledge as possible so that the world is helped. They're passionate about their profession and have just as much knowledge and expertise as the artist without immediately wanting to receive the applause for it. So that's the distinction, is really who gets.
Very good.
It's okay. The Viking, they're the ones that are going to go out and
pound through the organization.
Pounds through the organization like a loose cannon.
That doesn't sound like a good thing for a coach.
Well,
yeah, another verbs.
Well, take no prisoners, be blunt, and don't worry about bruising egos. Just getting the stuff. They're kind of the get her done kind of coaches.
But the personal need is power and results. Like, what kind of a coach has a personal? Like, is that a?
Yeah, I see. I've looked at it. Whenever I would read the Viking thing, every once in a while I would go, I can think of a couple times I've Vikinged on someone.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's not my
enough.
preferred mode, but I have found occasion to unleash the Viking.
Well, I would cop to that as well. If you're talking about where we could go, for sure. Yep.
Yeah, and so I think treating these more like stances is probably better, where you might have one place where you're more comfortable being, and there, again, going back to the 6 types, I think working genius, I think there's some overlap here, because the other roles are the mediator. They adapt to the situation. They're just trying to get peace. They're trying to get everybody involved in doing this stuff together.
This sounds like Jeff.
The professor is very knowledgeable in their field, and they just want to go and lecture everyone all the time.
That sounds like me.
All right. And then there's the networker. So they want to do things together. They want to exchange ideas. Connection is good. They're all about connection and relationships, which is a very important thing to have if you're going into a coaching organization, especially if you're trying to break out of just dealing with the team, right? To know.
And all the value that you deliver as a coach flows through a relationship, doesn't it? Like, you can't just go there and sit by yourself and have anything happen. Yeah.
I've just coached the room.
There's
no one in the room.
I was in here 8 hours a day. I didn't see or talk to anybody, but I was super coachy.
And the last one is the innovator. So personal development, fun, entertaining. They're trying to come up with new and creative ways to solve problems.
Yeah, I'd be more comfortable thinking about this as tendencies or stances, like you said, as opposed to personality types, because I think we all have probably inhabited most of these at different times.
And I think you have to, because to be versatile, you walk into any different situation, and it demands a different approach. At some places, it does demand the Viking. I mean, let's be honest. And, if you don't have a tendency for that, then you might want to partner up with somebody that does, whether it's playing good cop, bad cop, or whatever it happens to be.
Yeah.
But I think, to your point, Matt, being locked into one, I don't know. I think it really is, what personality should I take on to get the goal in this particular situation? Now,
Yeah, I mean, go ahead.
you're not gonna. I mean, I'm not gonna pretend like I'm an artist. That's probably not gonna happen. So, but I could probably occupy some of the others if I found them appropriate for the situation.
Yeah, and I don't think of myself as a Viking much at all, but I think the pattern that we know doesn't work is to be a hammer looking for a nail. Like, you can't just be one of these and hope that you get the right problem that suits where you want to do or how you want to be.
Right. Well, I think that it's difficult to say you're a coach at that point. You're really more of a replicator of
You're a tool.
a single thing. Yeah.
You're a tool.
Don't be a tool.
Don't be
All
a
right. So
tool.
there are some really cool links that point to this stuff, and we should make sure that we include them in the descriptions of this podcast so people can find them.
We make a note of that. Start using the description field in the podcast. Got it. Okay.
That's a good idea.
Yes. Now
I'm
we're
glad you thought of that.
Yeah. Well, hopefully nobody noticed until now. Oh, we've got people listening in other countries, by the way. We've got people in Turkey and in Libsyn.
Do we really?
Yeah. I just got an email that we're like number 20 in Estonia or something like that. I don't know how big that market is, but there are people
Big in
listening.
Estonia.
It's like being big in Japan. Like being,
Yes. That was
No, there's a time when movie stars would go to Japan. Like, you can do commercials and stuff. You can be a huge thing. Anyway, we're clearly done with this podcast.
So does that mean we've completed a discussion of this Agile thing?
Here it was, this Agile thing. For everybody, thanks for coming. My name is Matt Beam.
I'm Mike Markey.
And I'm Jeff Singleton.
See you next time.
See you next week.
everybody.